9 Reasons Why China Will Lose the Global Race. If you listen to commentators, you'll notice, there are two camps, and both push their narrative hard. The first camp says, with authority, China is still on the ascent, and is going to topple America as the leader of the world, in the next decade, if not sooner. The second camp says, China is on the descent, and it's going to face stagnation in its economy. We believe that China is not going to be able to continue in its growth trajectory, and is most likely going to experience significant growth reduction, and eventually lose even the position what they enjoy now, with their dominance in many areas, including manufacturing. We'll list the top 9 reasons why China will lose the global race to reach the top with all the details and hard facts. China's aging population. The first problem is China's one-child policy that was started in early 1980s as a tool to keep a check on its population. This policy has been changed in the recent years to let 2 or 3 children per family, but it is too little too late. Currently, the Chinese population is aging really fast, and will get much worse in the next decade or so. Let's put this in proper perspective. For a country to grow, it needs to have a high ratio of working age population of 15 to 64 years, to its retirees. In China, this group is rapidly coming down, and the retirees are growing at a rapid pace. When China started their market reforms in 1979, there were 7 working age people to every retiree, and today, in 2022, it is about 5 workers to 1 retiree, but by 2035, it will be roughly 2 workers to 1 retiree. With such a high level of aged people, China will find it hard to keep their factories running, and industrial and agricultural outputs will fall significantly. Even China's military will not have enough people to secure the nation. On top of that, the government is going to be spending enormous amount of money on healthcare, pensions, and other benefits to older people, and will be severely constrained to spend on other projects. China is looking a lot like its neighbor, Japan, which grew at an impressive pace in the 1970s and 80s, and started falling since the early 1990s. Until the late 1980s, Japan was spoken as the nation that will topple America in the next decade or so. But Japan fell off from its growth path since 1991, and nobody mentions Japan and growth in the same sentence anymore. Debt and economic decline. The next challenge for China is the structure of its economy, and the massive amount of debt accumulated. The Chinese economy is growing since 2005, mainly on construction, and growth in exports in manufacturing, with massive incentives. Both of this has created a lot of debt. The corporate and other forms of debt has piled on their state-owned banks, and has risen above 300% of China's GDP, apart from the off-the-record debt, that is estimated to be another 50% of its GDP. China has been growing their economy, with unnecessary construction activities, leading to unoccupied houses and roads, for the past 20 years, along with expensive mega-projects, that have not been financially viable to be maintained. China doesn't seem to have a real alternate plan, and seems to want to keep going on the same path, even more. Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. The grand vision of Xi Jinping, named Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure geopolitical strategy, building roads, ports, railway lines, etc., in poor nations, with the help of massive Chinese loans, given to them. China's ulterior motive has been to establish a military base on these nations, forcing the poor nations to accept them, when they are unable to repay the loans. However, BRI became a bottomless pit, and is costing trillions of dollars for China, adding to their debt, with very little economic benefit. Lack of innovation. China has been a country under a single party, namely, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, since 1949. One of the main goals of the CCP has been to make everyone follow their party lines. CCP prefers strict obedience by all leaders in various industries, and even their military is serving the party, and not the country. This strict code has stifled creativity and innovation, and almost all of China's achievements have come in implementing, copying, or stealing the technology of other countries. To achieve sustainable growth and become a global leader, innovation is the key ingredient, which is missing in China. Conflict with many nations, including its neighbors. For any country to rise on a consistent basis, it needs an alliance, which should include most of its neighbors, if not all. Almost all major powers, including the United States, have maintained an alliance that have helped them to create an environment of deterrence from their adversaries. China has literally picked up conflicts with every one of its neighbors, with their aggressive foreign and military policy. China's constant bullying with its neighbors has made many countries view China with greater suspicion and hostility, and has only weakened China. Lack of democracy and rule of law. China is not a democratic country, and its courts are heavily influenced by the CCP, and if anyone goes against the CCP executives or leaders, there is no possibility of a fair trial, or justice. Charges can be filed on anyone who is disliked by the party officials. Laws can be modified without any deliberation, usually to settle political scores. The recent disappearance of the tech billionaire, Jack Ma, imprisonment of other billionaires and business leaders like Zhou Zhengyi, Xu Ming, Gong Ai, and many more, in the past few years, as well as sudden introduction to new laws, to crack down on fintech companies, and the education sector, are examples of the quick change of the CCP's laws, and leadership behavior. This can cause huge disruptions to the Chinese economy. Any investor, either foreign or domestic, is under the mercy of the CCP and its top leaders. This has the potential for sudden loss of investor confidence and flight of capital, with no prior notice. On top of that, when there is no democracy, the industry experts, or the aides of the Chinese leaders, are afraid to voice their dissent when the Chinese political leaders make an error in judgment on a domestic or foreign policy. The current president, Xi Jinping, has been ruling China with an iron fist, and nobody dares to tell him that his policy is wrong. The recent zero-COVID strategy, affecting about 700 million Chinese citizens, was widely opposed by the people. However, nobody could disagree with Xi Jinping when he decided to enforce the policy. Similarly, people close to Xi Jinping don't have the courage to tell him that the BRI project is an absolute disaster to both China and the country it's trying to control. Automation in the manufacturing sector. One of the reasons why China had a huge economic growth in the past decades is due to the availability of cheap labor required for the manufacturing industry. The cost of manufacturing in China has been lower than its neighbors, like Korea, Taiwan, India, and Malaysia. The manufacturing industry is going through a rapid transformation, due to automation, and robots are replacing human labor. The richer countries don't need to worry about cheap labor anymore, in many sectors, and can manufacture a large part of their needs domestically, in the coming years, leading to a shrinkage in the Chinese export-oriented economy. It's a significant issue, given the fact the manufacturing sector is almost 40% of the Chinese economy. Internal power struggle. Since Xi Jinping took over in 2012, he has engaged in a crackdown of all his opponents, either removing them from their positions, imprisonment, or even worse. But, there is a huge faction of the CCP, with its rank-and-file members, loyal to the former president, Jiang Zemin. This conflict has spilled over into every area of the Chinese structure, including political, business, judiciary, and internal security of China. It appears this has a potential for civil disturbances, and subsequent clashes within the CCP, which will affect the economy. Lack of diversity in its population. China is a country dominated by Han Chinese, who are proud of their heritage, and have developed prejudice to almost every other race. Chinese leadership has preferred a homogenized populace. Tibet and Xinjiang are two large provinces that are being forced into abandoning their religion, culture, and tradition and follow a Han Chinese model. China has been very averse to providing citizenship to immigrants, even if they live for decades in China. The restrictions on the foreigners, who work in China, are one of the highest in the world. This has made China lack diversity, and most modern economies have thrived well, in a globalized world order, due to its diversity. Well, that concludes our reasons why China will lose the global leadership race. Thanks for watching.